Yeah, it's quick, all right. Right, yeah, mate, let's do it.
Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to be upstanding for the opening prayer? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Almighty God, we humbly ask you to guide our deliberations for the welfare and the benefit of the Moira Shire and the people whom we serve. Amen. Acknowledgement to country. We, the Moira Shire Council, would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet and pay respect to their elders, both past and present. Council, you may be seated. Thank you. Apologies and requests for leave of absence. Any councillors want to go on holiday? You should be. Okay, none. Thank you. Declaration under the Act, Regulations and Code of Local Laws. Declaration of any interest or conflict of interest. Councillor Burke.
Mr Mayor, agenda item 10.2.2, I'll excuse myself as there could be a perceived conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. 7, confirmation of minutes from previous meeting. Could I have a councillor move them? Councillor Limbrick. Could I have a councillor second that, please? Councillor Cox. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. Okay. Councillor reports. Councillor to provide verbal reports. Could I have a Councillor Mansfield? Sorry, we'll start from there.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Last week, Councillor Martin and myself attended the Murray-Darling Association's annual meeting at Wentworth. It was very informative. On the Monday, we had a tour of the Menindee Lakes. Just a little bit of history about the Menindee Lakes and the Darling River in general. The Darling River has been dry for the last 3 years. It's caused a lot of problems down the river. At Menindee itself, there's thousands of acres of vines, table grapes and citrus have been just lost because of lack of water. 6 weeks ago, the Menindee Lakes were completely dry. In March, they had a rain event in Queensland and the water coming down reached Menindee about 2 weeks ago. And last Monday, about 10 days ago, they started filling the Menindee Lakes with the water coming down the Darling. And we had a look at we were shown over the logistics of all the weirs and locks that were up there, and it was very, very informative. They've reached a trigger point where they're releasing about 300 megs a day to go down the Darling and hopefully flush out and allow whatever fish that survived this drought for the last 3 years to rejuvenate. But all in all, we had speakers from the CSIRO, climate scientists, Murray-Darling Basin Authority, and a lot of other local people to give us a greater understanding of the lower Darling. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Any other council reports? Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, Friday week ago, I was fortunate enough to get an invite to a function at Nathalia. It was actually at the grain store, and it was a follow-on from the very strong, powerful and thought-provoking production that was done with Can Art Stop a Bullet? Now, this was behind the scenes. Mark Street, the director, Danny Rawley, the editor, Mrs. Fiona Cochran, the producer, the whole lot were there that put this feature together, this production together, including our Mr. Bill Kelly. He's an internationally renowned human interest artist. This whole project started as a thought. We kicked off with a piano night, which then got seed funding. It went to a GoFundMe project and then able to extract both federal and state funding. 2 years later, we saw a world premiere at the United States building in San Francisco with the Australian premiere at Melbourne's Nova Cinema. The whole project was filmed across 14 countries. countries, and it clearly questions man's treatment of fellow men and women, including the famous the lone standoff of the lone man in front of the tanks, the Vietnamese girl post-napalm attack, the 9/11, and many other radical acts of mankind. This production has firmly put Nathalia on the world scene, with the footage included, and of course our resident and lead role, Mr. Bill Kelly. The aim of the night was to get the people that put this production together back to Nathalia to thank the community for its support and encouragement. Look, we're very fortunate to have people of this talent and calibre within our communities, and I'd highly recommend, if anybody gets a chance, would they view this Can Art Stop a Bullet? Now, it's the theory behind it is art perhaps can't stop the bullet, but it may stop the trigger getting pulled. Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. I couldn't recommend it more highly, Mr. Mayor. The other thing, very briefly, I had a bit of a peep in the last couple of days. I can report that the St Mary's Power Street bus interchange is progressing very, very well. And look, I think the weather, of course, has been an advantage, but a major safety issue. And look, it's progressing not that far off completion, and it'll be one wonderful asset when it's all up and going. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Any other council reports? Councillor Lawless.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last Saturday morning was the first Saturday morning I haven't had to work for a considerable amount of time. And so I took the opportunity to attend the local sports events that were on that day. And I happened to go into Tungamo to watch the grandchildren play, and they start quite early. But I had met a guy from Bendigo the previous week and invited him to come out there, and were just blown away by the number of people that are participating in sport. And just to give you a bit of an idea, and I know this is one of the passions of mine, is to be doing things for young people in our community, both girls and boys. That day there was 9 netball teams there. There was 270 girls participated, plus umpires, plus coaches, and that's without the parents and grandparents and the others that come along to support. On that same day, there was 200 footballers played football, plus umpires and coaches and everything. And as you well know, we've put resources into the soccer facilities in Cobram, and I understand there's 300 that turn up on Friday nights. And I did get some numbers of the Saturday mornings. It was just astounding, the numbers of Saturday morning, and a lot of the times it's girls and boys that play the juniors. On Friday nights in Yarrawonga, they tell me there's 280 children turn up there to participate on the Friday nights. And so whatever we put into these facilities, it's fabulous. The other thing I'd like to report, I was talking to Lisa Cox at Katunga, who's Secretary of the Reserve there. Apart from the sport that they provide for young people there, I know that they're very keen, and we have got in our budget for doing something about their pavilion. They have 3 sittings for tea on a Thursday night. Now, these are things that go right across the shire. I'm not just talking about those or 2 or 3 communities. I know that Wayne Councillor Limerick would know that the same things goes on in Athalia. I know at Katunga it goes on. I know it goes on at Waiai. So I just want to impress upon people that we are doing some really positive things for our community, and there's a lot more. There's not a lot more to it than just providing a good field or a dressing room or something like that. They're great things for our community. They bring it together. And if you're in any community in the city and saw the number of people that participate and get together, they don't get any dream of the community involvement that we get from our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to use this opportunity to table a letter from Mr. Bruce Pigden, OAM, in regards to the possible acquisition of the Yarrawonga school site. I'm not going to speak to the letter because I'm aware of the confidentiality around this agenda item. So I just wanted to make it public that I am tabling the letter. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Martin.
It would be 3 weeks ago now. I had the pleasure of going down to the ELGWA conference in Melbourne. Unfortunately, because of COVID last year, it couldn't happen. But last year would have been the 100th anniversary of the first woman in Victoria to be in local government. So it's 101 years now. So there was one person. Now there are 273 women across Victoria. Brimbank alone has 8 of its 11 councillors that are women. Now the theme was culture, conduct and retention, and it fits in beautifully with our local government Gender Equity Act. And it says here that culture is so important in any workplace and starts with us all as individuals. It's with culture that we set the tone for our next 4 years together. Conduct provides a basis for positive culture, and we can't underestimate how important this is in today's environment. In light of the Gender Equality Act, respectful relationships are a significant part of conduct. And finally, retention. Positive conduct and culture provide the strong foundations that lead to retention. And retention is vital in achieving a 50-50 gender balance by 2025. Now, I know some people think, what's the big deal about gender equality? Well, for one thing, gender equality is meant to be the basis of why there's so much domestic violence, because there's a total imbalance there in the respect towards women. So it is very, very important. And later on this year, Coral Ross, who has been a past president, she achieved a Churchill Scholarship last year. So she actually went overseas. And so she's going to report back on what she found that we need to do. We're getting more women in there, but it's to retain them, because some of them get an awful shock. Some of them are bullied. Some of them are not listened to. So there needs to be that respect in that area as well. So I look forward to that. And it was very interesting too. Another thing that came up, you know, some people say have quotas, other people say base it on merit. But Winston McCackey pointed out that merit is a structure. So it's not without its pros and cons, but it was an absolutely fabulous conference, and it was in the beautiful old Fitzroy Town Hall, full of history. And it was a really uplifting day. So that was really great. Then I went to the Regional Arts Victoria AGM in Nathalia at the Grain Store again, and lots of wonderful things happened there. That was fantastic. Regional Victoria, we're in a partnership with them, as lots of other people are throughout Victoria. They enable us to run workshops and bring all sorts of things of artistic endeavour to our shire. We had one guest speaker there. He's currently an artist in resident at Mercer Secondary College, and he's doing marvellous things with drama in a way that it's not a set script or that, it's the work of the children themselves, and it's getting the kids to find their own voice in that. But he was absolutely inspirational. So that was a really terrific afternoon. And then I also went with Councillor Mansfield to not Menindee, to Wentworth, and that was very interesting. And one clear thing that came out was that people felt that the current plan, it just cannot deliver, and that it has to be tweaked, that there's been no flexibility whatsoever, but it cannot be achieved. And that we also, all of us, whether we're farmers or whoever we are, we really need to take account of the climate and look at the reduction in rainfall and the reduction of runoff and that, and we're going to have to do probably more with less, change our whole way of thinking. So I think that was also, I've had, it's probably been really inspirational actually. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to give Council a bit of an update on the proposed Cobram East levy. We've had numerous meetings now, and finally, Mr. Mayor, that we're getting to the upper enders of it, not actually achieving it, but to go out to public consultation with this project. We have got a design basically in project in tow, and what I really want to do, Mr. Mayor, 2 seconds.
Let's get your tongue back.
What I really want to do, Mr. Mayor, is acknowledge the role of Kevin Crowe, a Cobram community leader, who's been the backbone of this drive for this Cobram East levy. The proposal is at the moment that we go out to public consultation once we get a bit more homework done, But at the moment, it looks like a third, like our money, state government and federal government money as well. So, but yeah, so just watch this space, but it's about to happen, so which is really good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that.
Cox, Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the very great pleasure of attending the Berrigan Shire Business Awards on behalf of you several weeks ago, and it was they had a record number of nominees for that occasion, and they were particularly innovative, I have to say, and it was very enthusiastically attended by several hundred Berrigan Shire residents, and the evening was actually emceed by Brian Nankervis from Rockwiz, so it was a very, very entertaining evening. And they certainly raised the bar. So thank you for the opportunity, Mayor.
Councillor Brooks, any other Councillor Limbrick?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was invited last week to attend a meeting out at Barmer, which is called by the National Indigenous Australian Agency. They're working with One Stop Driving School, who have a driving school at Bundalong at that end and also at Barmer at that end of our shire. Something I'd not heard of, but their main focus is trying to engage the Aboriginal community in workplace training. So they do heavy machinery training, rollers and compaction for the construction industry, traffic control and all those sorts of things. So it was an interesting meeting attended by various placement agencies. So some of the work trainers and those sort of people from Shepparton, including Rumballara Football Netball Club, who have a major players in the Indigenous Employment Agency. And they've invited me to be part of that ongoing. They meet monthly. I'm not sure that I'll go each month, but I've made a contact with the facilitator who's employed by the National Indigenous Australians Agency from Wagga, and he'll be back in about a month. So I've organised to have a coffee with him, who is a bit of a go-getter, and have opened an office now in Shepparton as well. So I think having regard for our address that we received from Paul Briggs and his crew last briefing session, I think it just sort of fits with that engagement. And we do use One Stop Driving School for training of some of the council staff already, and there may be an opportunity for us maybe to engage with some of the Indigenous workers that are getting trained through that facility. So it was really interesting, and I'll retain an association with that group if I can. And the other meeting I had on Monday of this week was the Golden Valley Waste and Resource Management Group joint board and forum meeting held at Benalla. And I did send out a written report to everybody today, so just in point form. But there were some pretty interesting topics, and one was the Australian statistics on waste and recycling. So it sort of placed how Victoria sits in the big picture in Australia, and how we deal with waste, and probably highlighted the inconsistencies with each state, how people report their waste, which makes it hard to get really meaningful statistics. But the important things from our council were there was some really good information provided about recycled products that are being used by the state government, being required to be placed in much of their large infrastructure work, so replacement for paving and that sort of stuff. So finding a market for recycled products. So we talk about recycling, but one of the biggest issues has been finding a placement for those products that they're manufacturing. So the Victorian government have made an initiative to include it in most of their big works contracts, so their freeways and things, and I think that should flow down to local government, and possibly is. It's something we need to be fully aware of. There is a website, which I put in the document this morning, where it allows you to go and find the materials that are available, and the sorts of things that council could actually use if we wanted to include them in our procurement policy. Some of the councillors may have attended, as I did, our waste audit a month or so ago, and the results of that were produced at the meeting on Monday. So how Moira Shire sits with the other 6 or 5 shires in the group. So there's some interesting stats there. We're doing pretty well, and again, I've highlighted some of those in that written report. We also had a presentation on the container deposit scheme, which is imminent, coming in 2023. So a lot of work being done in that area, and I think we're pretty well placed. With our staff are really on top of that as far as glass and how we're going to go with our 4th bin and all that sort of stuff. So it's that was a presentation from DELP, and that was really good. And we also had Russell Kennedy, the solicitors who act for local government, most of local government, talk about the Environment Protection Act 2017, which they're calling the new act. So it's already 4 years old, but it comes into effect on the 1st of July. And the frustrating thing from my perspective and from a lot of others was that much of the regulation around the Act is not out yet. So we've got an Act that's imminent, and the regulations are not even out. So that we're talking about, well, what happens if this happens? And they said, well, we don't know because we haven't seen the regulations and we're like 6 weeks away from implementation, which is a little frustrating. So there is a lot of work to do, and I'm sure Mark is on top of that and the staff are on top of it. But it'll certainly change the way that local government behaves in relation to all of our waste management, resource recycling, all that sort of stuff. So it was a really interesting meeting, and we've got another board, a forum meeting actually next Friday as well. So thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Limbrick. I was also privileged last week. I was invited by Mark Jepp to go to I suppose I was privileged simply because it's handing over $10 million to the Cobram State School, or consolidated school. It's a school that I went to in 68, 69 when I basically couldn't speak a word of English. So to get $10 million for their expansion when they actually haven't had a lot of money spent, and the school hasn't really changed much, and they're down to 250 students. So I think with a $10 million grant, they could put the school to the next level. We went to a classroom, had a discussion with some of the students over there. I don't know, 5 or 6, and Mark Jepp trying to explain to them what $10 million is. I don't know if they got their head around it, but it is a lot of money. I think they figured it out. $10 million, a lot of classrooms that can be built. So it was an exciting time for that school as a new principal's only been in the job for 2 years, and to quickly find $10 million for the expansion of his school, that's a huge achievement. So, it's great to see that the schools in Cobram have been all upgraded as the other ones have. So it's a thanks to Mark Jepp and his department to present that $10 million check one day to the school. In about 16 months, I think the design work will be carried out. So it could be 3 or 4 years before the school will be, expanded and new classrooms built. But I think it's great for Cobram. With the expansion of Cobram, we need to get to the next level. So again, once again, I want to thank Mark Jepp for his $10 million. So it's certainly going to help. So thank you, councillors. No other council reports. We've all gone through it. So now we'll move into public question time. Submitted questions will be read and answered by the General Manager, Corporate, Simon Rennie. Simon.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've got a few questions this evening, be answered by myself and the CEO. First one from Jeff Campbell. Councillors or council staff familiar with the Loddon Valley Tourist Centre located at Wedderburn? The Loddon Shire has developed their old red brick school into their central tourist office, library and community hub, and also like a reply in writing. So the answer is yes, they are. It also houses the District Health Centre, Centrelink and Vic Roads. It's a compact site with well-maintained buildings, providing a range of services to a small country town that lacks a lot of public facilities. It's had a $2 million facelift in recent years. 2 questions now from Jeanette Wilson. The first being, why isn't the information session to be held on Wednesday the 9th of June for the final design for the Yarrawonga Library, events and performance precinct not being held at the Yarrawonga Community Hall or the Town Hall, instead of the Willow Room of the Golf Club at Mwawela, to allow participants to view the areas to be impacted and rate-paying Moira businesses to cater for the event. Well, the meeting regarding the final design actually requires high-speed internet and advanced audio-visual facilities to enable the architect to present. We're also very confident that all the stakeholders are already familiar with the site. The second question involves why has there been no publicity on the Yarrawonga Moira Shire community conversations for the 2021 budget and 4-year plan? The Yarrawonga community conversation was well attended, and there was total support by community members for Moira Shire to acquire the Yarrawonga primary school site for community use, both for heritage value and to support the infrastructure needs of our growing town, and retention of the community hall and the need for more parking. So in reply, yes, the Yarrawonga conversation was very well attended by both councillors and the public. I was there, and we do appreciate the public response to that community conversation. And the process hasn't finished. It continues until June before a summary is published. So the deliberate engagement process is about giving the community the opportunity to discuss, and for the council and the councillors, who were also well attended, to hear people's views on a range of issues. Conversations occurred in all the 4 towns, and many in varied and varied topics were raised. So the purpose is not to publicise one particular view, but use all these views collectively to inform councillors as they prepare the final copy of the 4-year strategic council plan budget, revenue and rating plan and long-term plan, which I will still encourage you still have time to put in a submission. Those submissions haven't closed, and still a chance to speak to your submission in early June before the final documents are prepared. And the final 2 questions, I will read out the question. They were in a little bit late, but the CEO's agreed to answer those. And some questions from Paul Flavel for the CEO. So in answer to a question about the former Yarrawonga Primary School site put in the April meeting, Moira Shire meeting, regarding a more engaging approach, reference was made to the facilitated workshops with community and stakeholders to provide more of a conversational face-to-face workshops. When will these facilitated workshops take place?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I should perhaps just provide a little bit of context before I move to the specifics of Paul's question. So it's publicly known that the council agreed to enter the first right of refusal process in relation to the former Yarrawonga Primary School. And I guess if you were sitting in the gallery or the community, you'd wonder where that process had possibly got to. It's probably been running now for about at least 15 months. And I can only put it under the banner of COVID and the lethargy that's occurred within some areas of government. During that period, Department of Treasury and Finance has been working through the statutory steps that would enable the first right of refusal process to be wrapped up. Hasn't completed those steps yet. That involves declaration of all the land, both freehold and Crown land, as surplus to government requirements. And it also involves an assessment of native title. So those steps have been worked through. And of course, sitting alongside Treasury and Finance is the Department of Education. So I think specifically, Paul, to that question of when would those types of engagement and workshops take place, it would be at a point in the future at which the council had reached an outcome in relation to the first right of refusal process and had effective control of the site. And that's an if and when. So I can't unfortunately give you a specific time frame, but given the long lead time we've had so far with that first right of refusal process, I'm very doubtful it will be concluded this calendar year.
Thanks, Mark. And just one more question addressed to you. And that's from the April council meeting where there was an answer in the role the site would play. There was a reference made to some suggestions made in the past not being in accordance with other documents council has on how the foreshore would be developed. In the interest of transparent integrity, what are these other documents and proposals for foreshore development?
So I think through you again, Mr. Mayor, there's 2 pivotal documents that I would allude to, not just the foreshore, but we've got a number of suggestions that have been put forward in relation to potential uses of the former primary school site. I've certainly heard suggestions of a library. I've heard suggestions of a visitor information centre. So clearly in respect of those 2 particular proposals or suggestions, clearly the council has another view and a well-documented and referenced decision to proceed with a library project at the town hall site. And we've got that underway at the moment, and I hope that'll start to wrap up next month. The other really important document the council launched at the Yarrawonga Visitor Information Centre in relation to its advocacy for the Green Route Bridge was a foreshore concept plan which indicated where a future visitor information centre could be located. No surprises, it's located in that concept plan exactly at the point at which the current road bridge leaves the lake and hits the Yarrawonga foreshore. So obviously there's opportunity for different people to have different views about where major pieces of public infrastructure could be located. But certainly the council's view, as determined by resolution, and budget is to put the library at the town hall site and to ultimately build a visitor information centre at where the current road bridge connects to the foreshore. Now that second project is probably still a long way into the future, but it's certainly the ambition of the council as to where that project should be located.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's the end of the question submitted.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Mark. Okay, we'll go on with item 10, Officers' Reports for Determination. 10.1, Office of the CEO, Neil. 10.2, Corporate. 10.2.1, Quarterly Budget Review, March 2021. Could I have a councillor move that motion, please? Councillor Martin.
I'd like to move that number one, council notes the projections for the 2021 financial year contained in the March 2021 quarterly budget review. And two, that council notes the environment upgrade agreements quarterly performance report.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Cox, second. Councillor Martin, you wish to speak to it?
Yes. It's pretty self-explanatory, but hang on, I lost my place. Where are we? Yes, it's got here the major reasons for the increase in our surplus, which we've got at the moment, which was proposed in March of $2,525,738. Our rates and charges income generated from supplementary valuations on new properties, that was $73,000, and increased interest on rates, $110,000. Statutory fees and fines, income generated from increased town planning, $152,000, building control, $43,000, activity and swimming pool registrations was $30,000. User fees, income was generated from increased receipts from transfer stations and Cobram landfill, $123,000. Operating grants, receipt of new state government grant funding for women building surveyors program, that was $75,000, and employer incentive grants, $14,000. Capital grants, reduction in capital grants for Yarrawonga Multi-Sports Stadium from $1.92 million in Naringna-Merker Roads intersection, $720 due to delays in projects starting. The offset by recognition of grant funding for capital works to be completed by the end of June 2021. Yarrawonga Aerodrome lighting, $138,000. Power Street Nathalia, $285,000. River Road Yarrawonga, $825,000. Federation Park Cobram, $180,000. New Merker Apex Park, $360,000. Contributions monetary, recognition of community contributions to capital works. We've got the 1 year recreation reserve, which received $100,000 from the
Martin,
community.
you might have to leave a little bit for Councillor Cox to say.
Oh, right, yeah, and Yarrawonga, I'm nearly finished. And Yarrawonga Showgrounds watering system, $52,000. Other income, higher receipts from sale of recyclable materials from landfill, $85,000, offset by reduced income from legal charge and reimbursements of $40,000. Employee costs, labour savings across all departments due to the delays in backfilling roles caused by inability to recruit staff during the COVID-19 business disruptions, also reduced demand for casual staff while some activities suspended during COVID-19 lockdowns. That was $577,000. Reduced demand for staff training conferences during the COVID, which was $58,000, and external staff contract costs, $32,000. Materials and consumables. So we had some identified savings there and asset management costs of $100,000.
I never used the bell before, but I'm going to use it, Councillor Martin.
Oh, I thought this was very interesting.
That's okay. Keep going.
Keep going. Anyhow, we're tracking very well, and we're in a good position. And yes, I'd suggest if anyone wants to read any more of the figures, they can go to the website.
Yeah,
Seeing I'm
Councillor
getting
Cox,
the wrap up here.
You're not saying much. Any other council would like to? Councillor Lawless, go on.
I'll make mine short, Mr Mayor. Look, I think it's just worth pointing out, a lot of people will look at our strong cash position, but we need to be well reminded that there's much of those funds are committed to some of our major projects and to projects that we're waiting co-funding for, and also our works program that perhaps has slipped a little bit behind. And I think that we need to probably be addressing that as to how we get that program up. But yeah, just people to be aware that there's not that amount of money just sitting there that we can just go committing to whatever.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Any other council wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Martin, you wish to sum up? Really? Let's go.
Yes, well, as Councillor Laws says, a lot of the money is committed. It's not just sitting there, but often it depends on weather and the workforce and what's available on that. But our capital works, we do have a total works program of 47 or nearly $48 million there. And council is continuing to manage its position and continues to seek additional revenue. And this is what we're told that we're very good at, is getting grants, additional grants. So yeah, that's something to look forward to.
Okay, well,
Thank
thanks
you.
very much, Councillor Martin. All those in favour of the motion? Wow, carried, thank you. Now we have an apologies for this one, 10.22, a request of discontinue and sell section of Richardson Street, Nathalia. Councillor Burke, I think you have an apology for this, thank you. Conflict of interest, I should say. Can I have a councillor move Councillor Limbrick? Just hold on a second, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move that council resolves not to proceed with the proposed discontinuance and sale of the portion of north-south section of Richardson Street, Nathalia, following community consultation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brooks, you your hand up. You wish to speak to it? Councillor Limbrick?
Mr. Mayor, we followed the required process following an application from a resident to close that section of Richardson Street with a proposal to sell to the applicant. It went to public consultation and there was four submissions, written submissions, which were heard by a special meeting of council. And the overwhelming response was that the residents adjoining were certainly not in favour of that proposal, and having discussed it, I think Councillor, that the motion is representing the feelings of the community.
Thank you, Councillor Limbrick. Councillor Brooks?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to add that the Mayor and I travelled over to Nathalia on the 5th of May to a Committee of Council hearing in Nathalia to hear from the residents directly. And I have to say that they gave sincere and compelling arguments about how seriously they would have been impacted by the closure or the subsequent sale of Richardson Street. So I believe it's a good outcome. Thank you.
Councillor Brooks, any other councillor wish to speak to Councillor Martin?
I think this goes to show just how important this process is. And I'd probably recommend in future, I had a mishap with the time that I was there, but that everybody that can go to these go, because it's really important you can get a letter and things like that, but there's nothing like hearing from people, and you've got that chance then to sort of clarify any information on the spot. So yes, I accept this recommendation because it wouldn't have been in the best interests of the town, I don't think.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Lawless.
It did come out in some of the submissions. I support the recommendation. I think it makes a lot of common sense. And I agree with Councillor Martin. I think that in the past we probably have had more than just two people, other councillors that were available. And I think that's something we probably could consider into the future, particularly the councillors that may be in a particular area. But did come out in the discussions that some of the people may not have been aware of this was going on until they read it in the paper. And I think we just got to do that better. I think we've got to make sure that the people that are involved at the centre of a decision are informed up front that this is beginning to become public, and I don't think that's too much to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Limbrick, you wish to sum up?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think an outcome of the discussion and the submissions and having looked at that particular area, I think at some stage in the not too distant future, I think we need to revisit as a council that adjoining land and the zoning, which is currently farming land in the middle of the town, effectively, or on the edge of the town, that we look at that land in total and make a decision as to what we see the future of that land being, so that we can inform the adjoining landowners. And to Councillor Lawless's point, and we did discuss it at a briefing session, that in future we seriously consider notifying adjoining and affected landowners in writing of any proposed road closure or similar that may affect them. The system seems to be a little flawed when the only way those adjoining or aggrieved people can find out is by looking in the paper. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Limbrick. Can we have the motion? All those in favour of the motion? Carried, thank you. Councillor Burke? Yep. No, it's all right. Bobby's out there. It's fine. Thank you, Councillor Burke. 10.2.3 Victorian Electoral Commission 2020 General Election Report. Could I have a councillor move that motion, please? Councillor Lawless.
The recommendation of council note the Moira Shire Council's 2020 General Election Report prepared by the Victorian Electoral Commission.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Councillor Cox, you second that motion. Councillor Lawless, you wish to speak to it?
Not in length, just there's a few things. It's probably just a function of the government that they have to do, but it was interesting that there was less ballots sent out when we would think our population is growing or voters are growing. We had 82% participation, which was slightly down on what we were before, but was pretty much in line with the state average. I think it was about 84. I think I saw in the report, and we had less informal, which was good. So that's about all I've got to say on that.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Councillor Cox. Any other councillor wish to speak to that? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just noticed, reading through the report, there were 6 complaints in relation to the election, mostly related to administration and breaches. But one complaint, grabbed my eye, and that was related to the conduct of a participant. So obviously, or hopefully, that's not suggesting the complaint was against one of the candidates.
Okay, probably against you, Councillor Elliott. You don't want to say too much on that.
That's probably what I was asking more than anything else, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any other councillors to speak on that motion? Okay, Councillor Lawless, wish to sum up? Okay, all those in favour of the motion? Carried, thank you. 10.2.4 Replacement of laptops and monitors. Could I have a councillor move that motion, please? Councillor Brooks, did you move that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that council award the quotation to Dell Australia Limited for the replacement of IT equipment, laptops and monitors.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Lawless, I saw you second that motion. Councillor Brooks, you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just that rigorous process was complied with in terms of getting appropriate quotes from a range of suppliers, and yes, and Dell were subsequently the contract awardees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Lawless.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to Councillor Brooks, we did have 5 quotes, so it was good to have a range of people that we could assess on, and and Dell, apart from the other assessment criteria, was still the cheapest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Any other councillor wish to speak to? Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting to note that the council is moving with the times and has decided to move away from using desktop PCs to laptop, which increases the options for staff to work remotely.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Brooks, you wish to sum up?
Nothing further. Thank you, Mayor.
All those in favour of the motion? Carried. Thank you. 10.3 Community. 10.3.1 Commitment to the Goulburn Murray Regional Prosperity Plan. Could I have a councillor move that motion, please? Councillor Martin.
I'd like to move that council authorise the CEO to pledge council as a signatory to the Goulburn Murray Regional Prosperity Plan Statement of Intent.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Could I have a councillor second that motion, please? Councillor Lawless. Thank you. Councillor Martin, you wish to speak to it?
Yes, yeah. Basically, the Goulburn Murray Regional Prosperity Plan has been developed to guide, stimulate and ensure accountability to drive economic inclusion of Aboriginal people in the Goulburn Murray region. The plan vision is to achieve an additional 150 million gross domestic product per annum by 2036 for the Goulburn Murray region through the inclusion, prosperity and shared value of First Nations people. There are 6 strategic themes. So there's opportunities through culture and shared value, building enduring relationships, Goulburn Murray as a region of the future, accelerating enterprise and leadership development, skills and pathways for the future, and a thriving community with strong foundations. Now, I'm really quite excited by this, and I really hope that it works, because there's been a lot of things that have been going on. I know that Melbourne University has had a lot to do with Rumballara. The Kayala Institute has had a lot to do with people finding their way and finding out who they are and being part of the community, as well as being involved in the arts. Moira's been a sponsor of the Dungala Kayala Writing Awards, which is encouraging people to write in their own language, in the Yorta language. The Grain Store in Nathalia has done wonderful things to try and build up that reconciliation. This is, and I know there's been crops trialled, you know, on native grasses, because, you know, they've endured the droughts and that, but to actually try and get us to work together and for the Aboriginal people to be valued for the knowledge that they've gathered from thousands and thousands of years about the climate, the weather, all sorts of things, and for them to prosper and not be reliant on handouts and being independent in their own right, but also forming partnerships with us. So I really wish this all the very best. I really hope it does work, because, and they have provided there in their plan to tweak it, if, you know, that they will be evaluating it all the way through. So if something needs to change or accelerate or whatever, they will do that. So yeah, I gladly endorse this, and I wish it all the best.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Lawless.
I'd just like to endorse Councillor Martin's comments. I too was really impressed when we had a presentation on this several weeks ago, and I think it's a really positive approach, and it's to recognise the resources in our community that we have and improve outcomes for our First Nations people. And I think it's been driven by many of our First Nations people as well. And I think it's a fantastic initiative. And I truly hope that they do get the rewards that they intend to, and that the program goes well. And we're very glad that we are supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just think that adopting this recommendation is a lay down misere, in my view. Inclusion is a huge part of our council plan, stating that Moira Shire is a great place to live. So in saying that, we also value the culture and heritage of our traditional owners.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Limbrick.
I'll just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I endorse Councillor Martin's summation, and I think it's really important. Key part of this was the long-term strategies to redirect current welfare and social benefits that are paid to First Nations people into commercial prosperity, and I think that's really the secret, that we see the people of the local Indigenous culture prosper in the long term, so that they don't have that ongoing reliance on social welfare only as a given.
Thank you, Councillor Limbrick. Any other councillor wish to speak to it? Councillor Martin, you wish to sum up?
Just to sum up, I really hope this works, because it gives the chance for people to really succeed, to be entrepreneurs, to determine their own future, to get out of that poverty trap, to get out of the bad health and all those things. So, and to be really recognised for who they are, the First Nations people of this country. So, and I think that's really important, that we're on an equal footing and we move forward together. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Martin. All those in favour of the motion? Carried. Thank you. 10.3.2 Economic Development Project Fund. Could I have a councillor move that motion, please? Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council approve the Economic Development Project Fund and guidelines.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Could I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Burke. Councillor Mansfield, you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a document that's been put out to help to assist applicants preparing an application to Moira Shire Council's Economic Development Project Fund. The idea is that council will provide money for startups, small business up to $5,000 and medium and large business up to $10,000 to help them develop their particular business. I'm hopeful that when we get applications in, that it exceeds the funding available, which means that we'll have to increase the funding. And I only hope that business people across the Shire have a look at this project fund guidelines and possibly put it in an application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I endorse the comments of Councillor Mansfield. I think this is a great idea, Mr. Mayor, for the simple fact that it's for new start-up businesses. Yes, it's not a gold mine, but it is an assistance. And with our economic development team to get things in line so that the business know where they're going, I think it's absolutely fantastic. With your small and medium to large businesses, the same thing applies, with a bit of assistance to just make things go that much better. Now, it can be, there's quite a number of things that it can be used on. But look, I think as far as taking the risk out of small business, and unfortunately we do see a lot of small businesses fail in their early years, but I think this is a great encouragement to take that risk out of the small businesses. As Councillor Mansfield said, I sincerely hope that we're inundated with applications here, and I think it's a great thing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Limbrick.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think the two key criteria in that I think are important are the promotion of innovation and employment growth. And I think if, as previous speakers have said, if we can provide some assistance that develop those two things alone, I think we're making a difference.
Councillor Limbrick, any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Mansfield, you wish to sum up? All those in favour of the motion? Carried, thank you. 10.3.3.3, proposed designated area migration agreement. Can I have a councillor move that motion, please? Councillor Lawless.
The recommendation that the council agreed to participate, including making a financial contribution in an application to the federal government to establish the designated area migration agreement in participation with Greater Shepparton City Council, Campaspe Shire Council, and to authorise the CEO to provide a letter of support as part of an application process.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Could I have it, Councillor Cox? Thank you. Councillor Lawless, you wish to speak to it?
Probably only to make a request of you, Mr. Mayor, because I know that this is an area that you are particularly knowledgeable in and have got an interest in. I'm just wondering at some stage whether you might make a comment to the value of putting this agreement in place. And I think we've quite often, quite a few industries have talked about the struggles they have of getting a reliable workforce, and I'm guessing that this is one way of helping our communities. But if you could make a comment, I'd be much pleased.
Absolutely, Councillor Lawless. Look, the importance of having available staff to work within your business is fundamental. Without that, we can't go back and use a previous motion that you went to support local business if you can't get staff to grow. Now, at the moment, there's a big problem coming up in the very near future with the borders closed, with lack of backpackers, lack of workers coming into the country. We are in deep trouble. So, look, I want to support this to take to the next level. I don't know what we're going to do next year with the border shut. I've got my own issues with employing staff. They're just not out there. Doesn't matter how much you advertise. So, look, it's going to be a huge problem, Councillor Lawless, and I'm hoping that we as council support whatever we need to do to improve on this. And I can see a lot of problems in the next 12 months, but we really need to support this process. Councillor Cox.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I just think this relates to our previous motion about having successful businesses within our shire or within our region, I look at. Yep. And these, let alone the businesses, let alone the migrants, are going to need all the assistance they can get in the next few years to get through the humps that or hurdles they're going to hit. And I just think it's critically important that as a shire or as a council, we take a lead role in trying to assist people and assist businesses in a really positive way so that they can achieve their goals. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Martin.
I think this is really important because for businesses to thrive, they've got to have the workers there, and I'd agree. There's just not the amount there, and some businesses are doing it really, really tough, and possibly some businesses have even closed because they just can't get the reliable staff. But with this, there's I see here that it's got. We would have 450 workers across our region, which is Goulburn Valley, us, Murray Valley and Campaspe. And it's for three years, and it would be reassessed annually with changes made in agreement with the federal government. But I don't think we've got any other choice. I think we want our locals to work, so I don't think we give up there. But in the meantime, we still need this other arm, I think. Yep, so I agree with this motion.
Councillor Limbrick.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We've clearly, in Moira Shire and statewide, Australia-wide, probably skills and labour shortages are massive, and we saw it in the previous summer with our fruit pickers, etc. But I'm hearing all across the board from the hospitality industry, the motor industry, the fruit and vegetable growers, construction and agriculture, they're all suffering the same issue, and we need to do something. And this is just a start to be at least a little proactive and not sit back and accept the current situation that we've got. We have to try and move forward. I think this is a logical step.
Councillor Elliott, did you have your hand up? You didn't. Any other? Well, okay, well, so Councillor Lawler, should we wish to sum up then?
Only just to make one final point, that this is a great example of the cooperation we have with Shepparton City Council and Campaspe Shire Council, and like on a lot of other motions that we're putting forward and discussions that we're having, we're including those areas that are, yeah, well, we go with a lot stronger voice to the federal government, state government on issues that we have a common interest in.
Thank you, Councillor Lawler. All those in favour of the motion? Carried, thank you. 10.4 infrastructure, 10.4.1 Way dust suppression special charge scheme. Could I have a councillor move that motion, please? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that 1, council does not proceed with the implementation of a special charge scheme to construct a dust suppressant seal treatment on North, Fitzgerald and Railway Streets Way, and 2, notify affected residents of the decision regarding the sealing of the streets in the Way and thank them for their time and their effort in replying to their survey. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Lawler, shade your hand up for a second. Councillor Cox, you wish to speak to it?
At this stage, I reserve my right, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Lawless.
Yeah, no, look, we've been out to the community on this, and we've got the feedback that the community didn't want to contribute to this scheme, and I think we've done what we need to do. But I'd think that we probably need to have a really good think about what we're actually going to do in some of our smaller towns into the future, and perhaps we're not looking at them favourably enough with some of the facilities we've got in our major towns. There's people wanting to move to some of these towns, and I know that some of this particular street hasn't got through traffic and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think we just need to sort of be a little bit more positive and put a bit more thought into what we should do. Some of these towns are certainly, through the kickstart committees that we've got in all those towns going now, are becoming very progressive. And if we can help them along the way, I think we should be. But I know that that's slightly separate to what we're talking about here. But and I think we have talked about this in other areas about how we're going to share the costs. But I'm supporting this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Yeah, the council wish to speak to Councillor Limbrick.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think there's certainly a perceived inequity out there in the marketplace where there's work being done in certain parts of towns, and that should be replicated in other parts. But as we've discussed numerous times, it's not a bottomless pit of money. So I think from a long-term perspective for council, I think we should be seriously looking at, as Councillor Lawless said, dust suppression is just one of the issues, but we should be looking at what we can do for these smaller communities to try and make their standard of living a little better and make their livability a little bit better. And that maybe at some point we need to have these projects shovel ready just in case funding becomes available, and look at our long-term funding opportunities.
Thank you, Councillor Limbury. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, it is regretful that we've come to this position, and look, I can see very much that there's the Waiai community feeling a bit left out when we've had some major dust suppression works in Barmer, Picola, Nathalia, Yamurka, most of our other centres. And look, that we were lucky that that attracted some assistance for council to carry that out. And look, I think, to be honest, I think we need to, yes, I'd like to very much thank the engineer and all those that have put in a lot of work to get us to this position. But I think we need to, rather than forget it and drop it, I think we need to put it on the back burner in the view that if any assistance comes our way down the track. Look, I can see that the Waiai community is disappointed. We had the similar setup in Nathalia as we had in other centres where we'd done the shared cost scheme on some streets, and then we had this money available and we did the dust suppression seal at no cost, and some neighbours got their noses out of joint for the simple fact that they contributed. Yes, it did add to their real estate values, but their neighbours around the corner didn't contribute. And I think that this inequity we're going to have to try and deal with. I don't want to see this just drop off the planet altogether. I think we need to keep it on the back burner, and if funding becomes available at any time down the track, we need to bring it forward. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Cox, you wish to sum up?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor. Look, it's been said, we won't forget this item, Mr Chair, and a future council, or this council, will come back and address this issue, Mr Mayor. Whether we go through a budgetary process internally as a council or wait for outside funding to help us. Either way. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. All those in favour of the motion? Moved. Thank you. 10.4.2, Road Management Plan Review. I need a councillor to move that motion, please. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I move that Council 1, adopt the final draft amendments to the Council's Road Management Plan. 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to A, give public notice advising of Council's adoption amendments to the Council's Road Management Plan in accordance with Regulation 13 of the Road Management General Regulations 2016, and B, make a copy of the adopted Council's amended Road Management Plan and a copy of the Road Management Plan Review Report available for public inspection in accordance with Regulation 9 in brackets 2 of the Road Management General Regulations 2016. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Could I have a councillor second that motion? Councillor Lawless. Councillor Burke, you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, as I've said many times before, and I think nobody's going to argue with me here, one of our major concerns moving forward is our being able to maintain our extensive road network to the satisfaction of our communities. Mr Mayor, I think this goes a long way, and I've had a pretty good read of it. It is all consuming. There's a lot of detail in there. The big disappointment, Mr Mayor, is that we put this out and we didn't receive one submission, which is, I find that disappointing because we've got challenges moving forward. Like we've had seen the changes more recently in the change in our milk processors, where we generally had one fleet of trucks operating in a certain area. Now we've got 6 processors, so we've got 6 trucks all trying to use that same network. They're on roads that we've had to bring up the hierarchy to cater for. And look, it's going to be a big challenge moving forward. Plus, we've also got the large mass grain trucks and that we've got to try and cater for. We are very much an agricultural based shire. But look, I think, yes, this is a major piece of work. I think it's a very good piece of work because it holds it in good stead moving forward. But I do find it a bit disappointing that we haven't had one response. But look, there's, I'm sure tomorrow morning the phone may well ring. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Always hope. Councillor Lawless.
Just to add to Councillor Burke's comments, I suppose you could look at it as a negative, not getting a response, but when you consider that one of the things we've done, and I moved it probably 2 years ago, that we opened the road network up to B double traffic, and there was a bit of concern about what that might do to particularly our gravel or dirt roads, and obviously there hasn't been any thing untoward happen. And so that's probably a positive. We didn't get a complaint on that behalf. And certainly we need to be aware. I know there's been a bit of push statewide about putting speed limits on certain roads, particularly dirt and some of the gravel roads. But look, from experience, much of the heavy traffic that use those roads, and I have this experience myself, you can never go over 60 or 70 k's because you're only travelling short distances. So it's probably more relevant in the Mallee areas and that, but we certainly don't want to get to the stage where that's our fallback position. Oh, well, we'll let the roads deteriorate to a stage where we just put restrictions on. And I think that in some places, the road network, which we aren't responsible for, I make that clear, it's been let deteriorate, and it's put a sign up to signify that it's deteriorated. Well, realistically, that's not good enough.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. I'm with you on that one. I don't do any more than 60 k's on dirt roads either. So any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Yes, Councillor Cox, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, not getting a response from our residents on this, I see that as a positive. I think that I know not every road in the Shire is totally 100%, Mr. Mayor, I know that. But I will say this, that our road management, with all due respect to everybody, has improved over the years. And I'll still say that this work still needs to be done. I will acknowledge that. But it has improved, Mr. Mayor. And, you know, you can get on some of the dirt roads and you can do 70 or 80 k's on the dirt roads, which is fast enough, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Burke's right. Yeah, the milk companies and the grain truck, it's all changed, the dynamics on how that all operates. And who knows where it'll be in another 5 years' time. Like, this is the challenge we do face as a governing body. But yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Burke, you wish to sum up?
Only that I agree with all the comments made by my colleagues, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think that this is a challenge. I would like to think positive and be comfortable in the fact that we haven't received any submissions because everybody's happy. But I think, you know, when the phone starts ringing tomorrow, that might be shot down. But look, I think we need to try and do the best. We ask continually for community participation in our decision making. This is a major thing, and it does affect everybody across the Shire just about, even if you only, you know, students riding push bikes and whatnot, you still want a decent road to ride on. So yeah, I sort of feel that it is a bit disappointing, but hopefully, you know, next time we might get some very positive comments. I do agree with what Councillor Cox said. We have spent a lot of money. The roads generally are holding up very well with all the challenges that we've got. But, you know, it's moving forward, that's going to be one of our major challenges. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. All those in favour of the motion? Carried, thank you. 10.4.3, contract C003/21, supply and delivery of outdoor uniforms. Could I have a councillor move the uniforms, please? Councillor Martin.
Yes, I'd like to move that we award the contract for C003/21, supply and delivery of outdoor uniform to Work Locker of Cobram. And secondly, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents.
Could I have a councillor second that motion, please? Councillor Elliott. Councillor Martin, you wish to speak to it?
Yes, there were 10 submissions that were received as part of the tender process, and I believe a fair process was carried out, and I'm satisfied with the recommendation there for Work Locker of Cobram.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I thought it was a good reflection on a well-run council by the general public on the evaluation process when the end result sees our outdoor staff, our council crews and workers all dressed in the appropriate protective high-vis uniform with the embroidered Moira Shire logo. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very pleased that we've had 10 submissions and I'm even more pleased that we can award it to a local business. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's good to see that a local business got the tender under a very vigorous tendering process, and it was great to see a local business get it. And I'd like to see more local businesses tendering for Moira Shire business.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Any other councillor wish to speak to that? Councillor Lawless.
I'd just like to endorse the last couple of comments. And even it's gone through a rigorous process and perhaps the tenderer was only slightly not the cheapest. But when you consider the items that they mentioned, a wide range of brands that they've got, but also the good relationship that our staff have built up with a certain business, that you can't overlook those relationships and those things that well, particularly with apparel that we're talking about, it'd be very hard to deal with somebody that was too far away from us. So I'm very happy to support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Martin, you wish to sum up?
I reserve my right. Thank you.
All those in favour of the motion? Carried. Thank you. 10.4.4 contract C009/21 Punt Road Kindergarten Extension. Could I have a councillor move that motion? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Ware.
Sorry about that,
It's fine.
Mr. Mayor. Item 1, award the contract for C009/21 Punt Road Kindergarten Extension to Crow Constructions Proprietary Limited. Item 2, Mr. Mayor, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Could I have a councillor second that motion, please? Councillor Lawless. Councillor Cox, you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Mayor. Kindergarten's another growing area within our shire. We've got numerous buildings across the shire, and no doubt here in Cobham where there's another couple not so far away. So it's important that these Punt Road kindergartens keep their facilities up to standard so they can attract not only it's the kids, it's the parents to get to these facilities. Now, I'm going to walk a fine line here, Mr. Mayor. This contract has been awarded outside the shire. I fully understand that, but I'm just going to make a statement, Mr. Mayor, that there's businesses within our shire that successfully tender for work outside of our shire. So from where I sit, Mr. Mayor, the wheel turns. I've got no problem with a business coming and tendering for a work to do a job within our shire, knowing full well that there's businesses within our shire doing the exact opposite in other shires in our region. So I know it's a very fine and delicate area, Mr. Mayor, but that's just how I think about these things, and I just hope that everything goes on budget and on time for the actual Punt Road kindergarten. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cox, the issue with some of these projects is you've got to have a commercial licence to build these projects, and Cobham only has possibly one commercial licence holder. Yarrawonga's probably got a couple. So that's the biggest trouble with local contractors actually quoting some of these projects. So it makes it a bit difficult. In Crow Construction, they do move around the region, and at the end of the day, it is what it is. So any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out to councillors and all others is that the kindergarten area is going to be under a fair bit of challenges in the next few years, in that the government's intention to have year 3 and year 4 as getting 15 hours kindergarten each week. Now most kindergartens in the Shire and probably all over Victoria are already full at the moment. So that to have double the amount of kids at kindergarten is going to require a big challenge for all councils, especially us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Any other council wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Limbrick.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think, yeah, the inclusion of 3-year-old kind is obviously going to have a big impact, and that's a significant reason for this extension. But I think it's really important that we see the engagement of our younger children and hopefully it'll lead to a better social and educational outcomes for those kids that get to start a little bit earlier. So I think it's a well worthwhile project. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Limbrick. Any other council wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Cox, you wish to sum up?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, there was an item on the agenda here tonight a bit earlier about migration. So if families are going to come to our town or any town within our shire, it's critical that these facilities are up to standard so that the families can come in knowing full well that they've got the freedom to turn around and make a choice about which kindergarten they want to send their child to. So, yeah, so thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. As you're probably all aware, I own part of a kindergarten in Cobram, and we decided to build that 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years ago, thinking that 110 was too big. It actually filled up in 2 years. So there's such a demand for these to go on. We've got to support every opportunity we can for these expansions. So look, it's a great cause, and we need to put more money into it if we have to. So, councillors, all those no, hang on a sec. We've already summed up. Sorry, Councillor Burke. All those in favour of the motion? Carried, thank you. 10.4.5, contract C008/21, Rising Main Renewal, Gemmell Street, Cobram. Can I have a councillor move that motion? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 1, the motion, award the contract for C008/21, Rising Main Renewal, Gemmell Street, Cobram, to Longford Civil Proprietary Limited, and 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents.
Thank you,
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Cox. Can I have a second that motion? Councillor Lawless. Councillor Cox.
I'll reserve my vote, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lawless.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm glad I didn't speak seconding on the last motion. I would have added the wrong comment.
That's fine.
We've had 9 tenders for this, and this tender was the cheapest.
Speakerphone.
We've had 9 tenderers for this, and this tenderer was the cheapest. But the thing that I picked up in this report, that there were some that were in the ballpark of very similar price, but some were just significantly dearer than this tenderer. So it's good that we have good scrutiny and people that are making sure that we get the best value for our money.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Any other councillor wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Cox, you don't want to sum up. All those in favour of that motion? Carried. Thank you. Okay. 11, actions office list, Neil. 12, notice of motion. You got any motions? Neil. 13, petitions and joint letters. Neil. 14, cancel seal. Neil. Okay, council, we're going to urgent general business, councillors. To state urgent general business, if accepted. So is there any urgent general business? Councillor Limbrick, sorry. Yep. Okay, just hold on a second.
I'll move that urgent general business be accepted.
Can I have a second for that? Councillor Lawless, all those in favour? Thank you. Rightio, Councillor Limbrick, you've also got one too.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a little bit of background as it relates to the Barmah Brumbies. And I note that since 2019, Council broadly supported the joint management plan for the Barmah National Park, with the exception, or one exception, there are several, but one exception being...
Councillor Limbrick, we need to get a seconder for that motion, so
sorry.
just make it short if you could. So.
I'm going ahead of myself, which is
Councillor Burke,
unusual.
second it. You can speak to it now. Thank you.
Now I'll speak. Sorry, I'll go back to the start. The motion...
Just hold on a second. All those in favour of that motion? No?
So I need to read the motion.
Oh, okay, you got it. Okay. The motion is the Brumbies.
Excuse my ignorance, but I'll move the motion. The motion is that the Moira Shire Council strongly object to the shooting of any other killing of Brumbies in the Barmah National Park. Further, that we support the work of the Brumby Preservation Group in establishing a safe haven for the Brumbies, and ask that the quota of Brumbies proposed to be removed from the National Park in year 1 of the management plan be trapped and moved to the sanctuary as a matter of urgency. And further, that the Moira Shire Council confirm its position to the Minister for Energy, Environment and Climate Change.
Councillor Limbrick. Okay. Councillor wishes to speak to Councillor Burke. You wish to speak to it. Councillor
seconded
Limbrick. No, you seconded, so you've already spoken. So
Total chaos.
Hmm.
Mr Mayor, I go back to what I said before and I'll repeat. Since 2019, Council have broadly supported the joint management plan for the Barmah National Park, and with the exception of several things, but one of them being the removal of the Brumbies from the park. So what I'm proposing is not a breakaway from Council's stated position, but just in recent months, negotiation took place between the Brumby Preservation Group and Parks Victoria, and it was agreed that the Brumbies to be trapped in the current year, being 110, were to be trapped and placed in a purpose-built sanctuary built by the Brumby Preservation Group. The group raised in excess of $100,000 to build and practically complete the sanctuary, and those funds came from not only local but national and also international sources, which I think is an extraordinary effort. And as of now, the sanctuary is practically complete. There was a bore went down this week and cattle yards have been installed and all the fences are completed, and they have significant amounts of hay on hand to feed the horses. But despite that, Parks Victoria have decided that they need to get rid of 110 horses by June 30. They've had an independent vet assess the facility, and he states that the facility is world class. However, Parks Victoria, in their wisdom, have decided that there's not enough feed for the Brumbies, and that they'll be dealt with in some other way. And I think that's a pig-headed approach, consistent with the whole negotiation in relation to the joint management plan. The way it sits at the moment, and to the best of my knowledge anyway, by the 30th of June, it's quite possible that we will see the slaughter of Brumbies within the national park, and I don't think under any circumstances that's acceptable. And I'm asking Council to support my motion. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I couldn't agree more with Councillor Limbrick. It's not nothing new, it's a refreshing of Council's position. I couldn't agree more, Mr Mayor. We've got Parks Victoria have been allocated the job to manage the state park. And to be quite honest, I think it's possibly about time they did start doing just that. Now, Parks Victoria aren't even aware of how many Brumbies are out there. Now, it's a pretty poor case when we've sort of got these knee-jerk reactions. While we've got pigs, deer, etc. running around out there, I think Parks could be doing a lot better job, and I think it's only because of the emotional attachment that we're looking at the Brumbies. As I've said before, Mr Mayor, if I was to put an advertisement in Saturday's Melbourne paper asking people to come and see our Brumbies, we'd be fighting them off with sticks. But unfortunately, I don't think we'd have a vehicle good enough to actually take the people out there because of the condition of the roads. I think I've probably said enough, I've probably said too much, but look, I think parks do need to start to actually manage the park rather than just this lock it up and leave it attitude. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Burke. Any further discussion? So Councillor, there is okay. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I can understand that parks have their rules about the horses, but I can't understand that they're saying that the feed isn't adequate without giving a sum that would make it adequate. Well, how do you get around that problem? And I think that is solvable. So if they feel that the pasture isn't good enough or there's not enough hay, what would the people need to do to bring it up to an acceptable standard rather than just saying no go? It's got to be negotiable.
Councillor Martin. Councillor Lawless. Mansfield, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wish to speak against the motion in that I'm fully supportive of the first part of the motion, that we support Brumbies in the national park. But the second part of the motion indicating that we provide staff to help shift the Brumbies to another sanctuary, I don't think that we are qualified to be doing that. Also, the park is under the control of Parks Victoria. It's not our park, it's Parks Victoria. And I don't think we should be involving our staff in shifting brumbies out to a sanctuary that's quite 100%, but I don't think that we should. I'm speaking against the motion under not the first part, but the second part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milk. Mark, what is the motion? Can you just hold on a second? What is the motion, Mark, please? Just hold on.
Mr Mayor, I've taken an abstract of the motion. I do have it in another form, which is word for word as moved by Councillor Limbrick. My notes don't indicate any involvement of council staff in any physical activities in relation to the rehoming of brumbies, merely just an advocacy position of the council.
Thank you, Mark. Any other councillor Lawless? Thank you.
No, that's the way I took the motion to be. But I think that by moving a motion like this, it highlights our position that we put in our original submission and to the broader community and shows that we support them. And they have got a plan there in place. Just on a lighter note, it's probably a pity some of these people that want to rehome some of our mice problem don't want to rehome some of this here. Like seriously, there are some nutters in the world, and I think they just have to be called out. But this is a different case completely, and I fully support Councillor Limerick's position.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Law stole me thunder a bit with the mice one, but anyway. But look, just that I don't want to see an overpopulation of the brumbies in the Barmah Forest either, Mr Mayor. I will say that. But by doing what we're doing, I hope that we might, Mr Mayor, trigger the state government to review our management plan at Barmah. Wouldn't that be an outcome? So I'm supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favour for Councillor Limbrick's motion? Unanimous, carried. So this now you got one more. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Just hold on a second.
Sorry. Oh. Thank you. I'd like to put forward a motion that at some stage we organise an afternoon tea for the Mac Inc. Incorporation to, they've just about wound up, they're finishing off things that they couldn't do last year, but then it's the 4 hubs now, but we've got a terrific culture. We've got, I think it was Jessie McCallum.
Okay, can we get a second that motion or not?
Oh, yes, sorry.
We have Councillor Lawless. Yeah. Okay, now you can speak to it.
So we've got, look, we're really kicking goals. We had Jessie McCallum, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, but she advocated for a cultural officer, which we had in Marilyn Goulet. Then it went on to Mac Inc. Now it's gone on to the 4 things. So we're getting quite, and we've upped our contributions by 20%, and that will go up in the future, I'm sure. But I think we need, Mac Inc. will finish this year as they're finishing off things that they couldn't do last year because of COVID, but they have done, and the whole aim of Mac Inc. was to embrace the arts, and we did have arts in the Shire, like we've had across the arts at Yarrawonga, the America Singers. There's been lots of things going on, but we wanted a coordinated approach so that everybody in the Shire had access to the arts, and that is, I think that's been and is being accomplished, is continuing to be accomplished. And I'd like to think that we could put an afternoon tea on, because they have done hours and hours and hours of volunteer work.
Yep. Any other councillors wish to speak to that motion?
Anyone want to
Okay,
second it?
Councillor Lawless? No, we already seconded it.
Oh, you did second it.
Second, that's why you got to speak.
Yep,
Councillor
I
Lawless.
seconded it. Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea, because one of the things that might achieve is that not if we could recognise the amount of work some of these people have put in, and perhaps they might be finding it difficult to get their head around where we've sort of moved to, that it might encourage them to be part of those hubs and continue with the good work that they've been doing for the community.
Thank you, Councillor Lawless. Any other councillors wish to speak to it? Councillor Cox? No, just hold on a second. No other councillors wish to speak to it? All those in favour of Councillor Martins? Yes, carried out. Thank you, Councillor Cox. You have a motion to move? Want to drink first?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Our next formal council meeting, I want to move, Mr Mayor, that we bring it forward 1 hour, please, from our normal time.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. And obviously, Councillor Lawler, should wish to speak to it? I'll
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, that so that the council and senior management can attend a function, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Council wish to speak to that motion? Okay, all those in favour of bringing the meeting forward 1 hour? Councillor Burke, are you in favour or against? You're in favour, 2 unanimous carried. Thank you, Councillor Burke. Rightio. So that concludes our general council meeting. So I'd like to now switch off. Sorry? It's closed, the meeting's closed. So we got something in confidential I want to, Mark will want to present. So once we